Hey guys, it's me. It's Queen Osset Haru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. Also, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, pass it on to everybody and anybody, and leave us a positive comment in the comment section. And don't forget, if you stick around to the end of the video, you'll get to hear some of my favorite comments from previous videos. So somebody asked me a really decent question. I like this question a lot. And I gave 5 reasons, and you guys might have 5 of your own too. But these are the 5 that I came up with just from studying history. This person said to me, Queen, why don't relationships last like they did in the old days? And it is like that. I mean, if you just look at statistics, you can see it. Relationships, especially marriages, are lasting less and less time. And they want to know why. Like, what's so different between then and now? So from studying history, one of the things that I found out, my number one reason, is that women have changed. Over the course of the centuries, women have got rights, at least in most countries. So we're going to speak about the countries such as the United States. So women in the United States have rights. Women did not always have rights. And what does that mean? That means that back in the day of our grandmothers, great-grandmothers, and great-great-grandmothers, it wasn't as easy to get along in society being an unmarried woman. Number one, things like, for instance, having custody of your own children, being able to have a business, being able to even testify in court. There was a time period when women were not allowed any of these rights. And there were some very strong women who stood up and fought and marched and did all kind of stuff for us to get these rights, especially here in the United States. Now, like it or hate it, that's how it happened. The feminist movement, the suffragist movement is what the original one was called. Those types of movements fought for women's rights. So now we have rights. So women, 100 years ago, a woman might have stayed with her husband because she can't have custody of her kids. She can't make a living for herself. She needs him. Now, 100 years later, I don't need you. I can get a job, I can vote, I can take care of myself, I can, publish books if I want to, I can testify in court, I can do jury duty. I, at this point, have rights. So I don't have to hang on to a man because I don't have the right to do a lot of stuff, and I need his legal, political pull to get anything done, period. Now, even 100 years ago and 200 years ago, we had women like the suffragist women and the feminists, the womanists, all these different women. We had women that were already fighting these kind of things, and it just took a while for things to change. So the number one reason why relationships don't last is because a lot of those relationships lasted because those women needed their husbands. And in a lot of cases, vice versa, because a lot of men were not taught to take care of themselves. They were taught to get a wife to cook and clean and take care of them and take care of their children. So a lot of times they lacked the skills they needed to take care of themselves. They could work, they could do those kind of things, but they couldn't do domestic type things that they needed. So they needed a wife, and the women needed a husband. Times have changed. So a lot of couples, that pressure is not there anymore. So if the husband is unhappy or the wife is unhappy, you don't have that question over your head like, well, can I do this on my own? Can I take care of myself? Now, we do ask her. I asked myself that question when I first got divorced, but the answers are different now. Yeah, you can take care of yourself. If you can find an income source, you'll be fine. So that's number one. Women have rights, and that has changed a lot of things in our society, including our personal relationships. Number two, more knowledge about the effects of dysfunctional relationships on our mental health. We now know that staying in a bad relationship is not good for the children. It's not good for you, the wife or the husband, or the boyfriend or the girlfriend, or whoever and whoever, the girlfriend and the girlfriend, the husband and the husband. If it's dysfunctional, it is not good. And we have more knowledge about that now. There was a time period where you could, and it wasn't that long ago, like in the 60s and 70s, I remember this still being a thing. There was a time period when you could beat your spouse, your husband or your wife, and the cops would come and not do anything. They would come, break you up, tell y'all to go take a walk and cool off, and that was it. Nobody getting arrested, nobody getting rolled up, no kind of awareness, no kind of counseling, nothing. They would come, break y'all up, and keep it moving. So we now have knowledge that being in a dysfunctional, abusive relationship is bad for both people and the children. So now, because we have this knowledge, when a relationship goes sour, people start to think about that, like, this isn't good for us. We now know the effects of that on our mental health, emotional health, physical health, even spiritual health. So now, because we have that knowledge, things have changed. We know it's not better for the kids to see mommy and daddy pummeling each other every night versus breaking up the family. So we now know the effects of that. We've done enough studies, in sociology and in psychology. We've done enough studies on that, and now people really understand that it's not good. The next one is people give up easier. In the old days, people hung on to relationships a lot more than we do now. I remember my aunts and uncles and grandparents hanging on to relationships that I thought were clearly dysfunctional at the time, and looking back on it, were very much so. And some of them broke up eventually. Almost all of them, now that I think about it, broke up eventually or passed on. But the bottom line is that people give up easier now. People, and this can be good and it can be bad, because on one hand, I think that you should give your relationship a Hercules effort. But on the other hand, I think that, like I said before, it has a detrimental effect on your mental health. So if it's something that really is messed up, you're better off just letting it go. So now people have a tendency not to stick in there. My grandparents stayed together from the time they got together, and they did a lot of things to each other that if somebody did to me in this time period, I would leave them immediately. So they didn't give up on each other. They hung in there. He did messed up stuff. She kicked his butt a couple of times. My grandmother was my size, and she was a heavyweight, and my grandfather was a skinny little man. So my grandmother didn't have no problems popping him in his mouth when something went wrong. I mean, that was how they just decided to handle their relationship. And they stayed together throughout all of that dysfunction and had 13 children. So my thing is that they didn't give up on each other. Now, whether or not they should have given up on each other is a different conversation. I would have gave up a long time ago. As soon as I got hit in my head, I would have gave up. So basically, people back then, they hung in there. They didn't give up. They had more of a belief in longevity. Now, some people do still believe in this. I've heard people say, well, we've been together for 13 years. I don't want to throw that away. I still hear that now, but I heard it a lot more from my elders than I do my contemporaries. The next one says, divorce has become more socially acceptable. Divorce was not very socially acceptable back in those days. So couples would just hang in there, even if they didn't like each other anymore. They might live in the same house and have separate bedrooms and just stay together, because divorce was seen as shameful. Certain religions wouldn't even allow you to get a divorce. So it didn't matter. Like the Catholic religion, for example, if you were Catholic, you couldn't get divorced. And if you did get divorced, you couldn't be in the church anymore. In a lot of cases, they would kick you to the curb. So it does greatly depend on the church, but a lot of churches, that was the rule. Divorce was a no-no. So if you got divorced, you were shunned, you were shamed, especially the female. But for both of them, it was seen as a failure. Now, when people get divorced, we just figure they're irreconcilable. They couldn't make it work. And we all have had these types of situations or know somebody who couldn't make it work. So we all just go, okay. At this point, 100 years ago, if you wanted to get divorced, you were looked at like a lunatic. And it didn't matter what was happening to you. If your husband was beating you, if your wife was stealing your money, it didn't matter what was happening. People expected you to stay and stick it out regardless. Now, divorce has been, it's like everybody knows it's acceptable to get divorced now. If the person isn't treating you right, you might try for a little bit, and then if you have to get divorced, everybody's like, oh well. But 100 years ago, 200 years ago, people would look at you funny, like, oh, he's divorced, like you were damaged goods or something. And the last one, there are a lot more options now. 100 years ago, your dating pool was mostly your neighborhood, your city, what was around you. If you went away to war or something, you might have more options. Or if you went away to college or something, you might have more options. But for the most part, people married and lived and died in the same 5-mile radius. And that's still true to this day. But now people are finding mates further and further away. How many of you know somebody who married somebody in another country and then flew them to their country and got married? It happens every day. And it wasn't as common 100 or 200 years ago. They didn't have Tinder. They didn't have all of these online and telephone kind of sites. So there's a lot more options. I could meet a woman in Hong Kong. I could meet a woman in South America, I could meet somebody across the country and fly and go be with them. That was not the case 100, 200 years ago. It happens sometimes, but for the most part, you dated locally. So now we have so many more options, so many more people, so many different types of relationships, poly relationships. There's so many more options now for a relationship. Also, if you want to stay single, that's now a viable option. That really wasn't an option 100, 200 years ago. If you stayed single back then, people thought something was wrong with you. You were gay, you were a lesbian, or something was wrong with you if you didn't get married. Because of course everybody wants to get married, everybody wants to have a child, and that was the way people thought. So if you didn't do it, then you were looked at funny. Now we have the option of being single. We have the option of not having kids. Your great aunt might ask you about it every Thanksgiving dinner, but the rest of the world really doesn't care. So now we have so many more options as a global society that relationships, you might be more inclined to stay with someone. But now if you have other options, if I can meet somebody overseas and go live with them, that changes things. I might not stay with my husband or stay with my wife as long or at all. So those are the 5 reasons that relationships don't last as long as they used to in a lot of our societies. The bottom line is that times have changed. Technology, rights, laws, all kinds of things have changed that weren't in place 100 and 200 years ago. So now things are changing, right? Let's talk about my favorite comments. One came from Terrell Brandon. Terrell said, my favorite Aquarius are Oprah Winfrey, that's my girl, Alicia Keys, Brandy, Justin Timberlake, and Alice Walker. I love Alice Walker's work. I myself is an Aquarius, love being one, and love being uplifted ideas. I don't know what Terrell was trying to say right there, but it looks like he's trying to say that being an Aquarius is hand in hand. That's the word. Being an Aquarius is hand in hand with being love and being in love. Aquarius is the sign of friendship, so all types of love comes from friendship. Queen, you are speaking to my soul. Thanks, Terrell. Thank you so much for your comment. And I do agree with you. Aquarius, we do have a strong influence in the love area. Love in all forms, definitely. Love for humanity, love for goddess, love for God, love for spirit, love for the earth. We have a lot of that vibration going on. And many of us are hopeless romantics. And the last one said, Mrs. Beauclair. Mrs. Beauclair said, girl, I missed you. Child, missed y'all too. I definitely miss talking to you guys because, you know, it's really strange, but it's really cool. When you're a YouTuber, it's really cool to be able... Excuse me, my throat is going through changes. When you're a YouTuber, it's really cool to be able to have personal conversations in the comment section with the people that are on your YouTube, your subscribers. So whenever I don't talk to you guys for a couple of days or so, I notice a difference. It's like I talk to more people when I'm around you guys. When I'm not doing Ask an Aquarius, I don't talk to as many people. So it is a big difference, and I'm glad to be back. All right, I'm going to go get my throat together because it's tickling. And I think it's my allergies. So come back soon. Woo, come back soon because I got a lot more to say. See you later.